Hi, guys. I'm going to start with chapter 4 of Kate DiCamillo's Leroy Ninker Saddles Up. And I thought I would start there because we've actually already read chapter 4 as a class, but there were a few kiddos absent on Friday, and so I wanted to make sure they got caught up with everything they've read. So before I get started, I do want you to turn and talk maybe to somebody sitting close to you, a pet, your mom or dad, or a brother or sister, and tell them what's been in the book. What have we read so far? All right, so that's a few seconds. You can always pause the videos if you need more time to talk. But in this book so far that we've read about a man who worked at a drive-in movie theater. And he poured the butter on people's popcorn. He sold tickets. He's a very good worker and very helpful. But he had bigger dreams. He had always dreamed of being a cowboy. And so, in order to be a cowboy, he thought he needed a horse. Well, one day he saw an ad from a lady named Patty Lamarck of a horse that she was selling because she had to move and didn't have room for her horse. So he went to go meet Patty Lamarck, and he had aspirations of naming the horse Tornado. Remember how excited he was about naming the horse Tornado? Well, the horse ended up already having a name, and since it was an older horse, he kept the name, and the horse's name was Maybelline. Well, now, Patty Lamarck told him 3 things that he needed to do in order to keep Maybelline happy. First, he needed to give her lots of compliments, that she was a horse that really responded well to getting compliments. So Leroy Ninker said, okay, I can give her compliments. Then she said that Maybelline had to eat a lot of grub. And remember, we talked about food being, grub being a fancy word for food. So a lot of grub. And then Maybelline would get lonely sometimes, so she could not be left alone for long periods of time. So those were the 3 rules he had to agree to follow in order to take Maybelline. So now we catch up to them. They're on their way home, and he's given her a lot of compliments. So I'm going to start chapter 4, and hopefully you guys will enjoy this. I will show pictures too when they come up. Chapter 4. Leroy Ninker held on tight. He thought of more pretty words, and he said them. Sweetness, said the cowboy. Lovely one, beloved. The horse went faster. Maybelline of my dreams, shouted Leroy Ninker. The world was a green and gold blur, and Leroy was happier than he had ever been in his life. Maybelline ran and ran and ran. The horse ran until the sun was low in the sky, and the shadows were long and sad. Maybelline, said Leroy into Maybelline's left ear, it's time for the 2 of us to head home. Maybelline nickered. She slowed down to a trot, and then she stopped entirely. Leroy Ninker slid forward in the saddle. Giddy up, my beautiful one, said Leroy, but Maybelline held still. Yippee-yi-yo, my beloved, said Leroy. We are homeward bound. Maybelline looked to the left, and then she looked to the right. She let out a long whinny. Oh, said Leroy. I get it. He slid off Maybelline's back. He took hold of the reins. Come on, horse of my heart, he said. I will show you the way home. And here's a picture real quick of Leroy taking Maybelline home, maybe. If I can get it. Oh, there we go. Do you guys see that? Sorry. I'll get used to this. Oh, there we go. I'll get used to this of how to maneuver the camera. So there he is taking her home. Sorry about that. And sorry if you can hear my dog chomping on food. Leroy walked ahead and Maybelline followed behind, and every once in a while she would give Leroy a friendly little bump with her nose, pushing him forward, and in this way the cowboy and his horse made their way home through the deepening purple dusk. Home was Garden Glen Apartments, Unit 12. Unit 12 was a very small apartment, which was just fine because Leroy was a very small man. Maybelline, however, was not a small horse. She was a tall horse, and she was a wide horse, and she would not fit through the door of Unit 12. "Gall dang it," said Leroy Ninker. He gave Maybelline a little push, and when that didn't work, he gave her a large shove. But Leroy soon saw that it was impossible. All the shoving in the world was not going to make Maybelline fit through the door of Unit 12. "Dag blibber it," said Leroy. He actually felt like he might cry, which was ridiculous because cowboys definitely didn't cry. Leroy closed his eyes and Patty Lamarck's face floated into view. She opened her mouth and said, "Cogitate on one item. If you care to move forward, Hank, you gotta compliment the heck out of her." So here he is, maybe again, trying to push Maybelline into his tiny apartment in Unit 12. Okay. Leroy opened his eyes. He cleared his throat and he said, "Maybelline, you are the best, squeeziest into a small spot horse that I have ever known." Maybelline twitched her ears to the left and to the right. While the horse was busy savoring the compliment, Leroy gave her a hopeful shove. But Maybelline still wouldn't fit through the door. "Flibber-gibber it," said Leroy. He closed his eyes and conjured up Patty Lamarck's face again. He tried to remember the other items about Maybelline. He thought very hard. "I got it," he said. "Item 2 is that you are the kind of horse who likes a lot of grub." Leroy opened his eyes. Maybelline was looking at him in an extremely hopeful manner. "Well, yippee-I-okay," said Leroy Ninker. "I will make us some food, and then we will deal with the too small door." Maybelline looked as overjoyed as it was possible for a horse to look, and Leroy was moved to compliment her again. "You are the most splendiferous horse in all creation," he said. Maybelline whinnied long and loud. She nodded in agreement. She was truly an excellent horse. Leroy didn't think he would ever be done admiring her. And here she is whinnying at Leroy Ninker's compliment. So you see that there? All right. And pretty painlessly, that is the end of Chapter 4. I will start a new video for Chapter 5.